A couple of days ago, I spoke to a charity that helps people with criminal records start businesses. And they were looking for business mentors, and we had a conversation about me potentially helping. But a couple of things that they said really concerned me. So they went over what they helped with. They said they help with marketing, social media posts, branding, and they help people raise funds. And they also help people wanting to develop physical products or services. And on the surface, that sounds fine, but it became a lot more concerning to me because when I dug in a little bit more and I asked them about how they measure success and what their success rate were, they had no answer for me, right? So they didn't have metrics that they could quote me, and there was no way to measure success for them, which really raised alarm bells. And I was debating whether or not I should make this, because in some sense, I feel like I don't have the right to comment on what people with a criminal record should do, because I have no idea what that's like. But I think the basic steps, the fundamentals are transferable and they kind of remain the same. So I'm going to try and make sure to only refer to my experiences so that I can speak about what I know rather than sort of generalizing to what people should do. So what is step one? I think step one is choosing the business model that you want to go for or the offer that you want to sell. And for most people, it kind of falls into 4 different categories: product, software, service, and content, right? When you're first starting out and you have an idea for a business, it's usually one of these 4 things that people go to. And I'm just going to go into each of these. When you're thinking about product, what I mean is like a physical product, direct to consumer, drop shipping, stuff like that, where you're selling a physical product. There are a couple of disadvantages with the product model. Number one is that you have development costs, which are costs that go into making a product that is actually good. Number two is that you have to be really, really cautious of margins, especially when you're starting out. And a lot of times the margins actually don't make sense, and you have to sort of eat the cost and lose money for a while in order to actually become profitable. And number 3 is that it's me against the world. So because you're selling a product and you're likely to be selling it online, the alternative, the competition, is literally everyone else in the world, right? So if you're, for example, selling a water bottle, which was the example that the people that I spoke to gave, you're competing against every other water bottle company in the world. And you have no branding, you have more likely than not an inferior product, and it's really tough. Number 2 is software. So software, likewise, you have an upfront development cost, and there are no code tools out there. You can code with ChatGPT. These are all options, but whether you pay for it with time or with money, there is an upfront cost for developing a software. Likewise, with software, you have to worry about margins. I'm not talking about business to business, but you're talking about consumer software. You have to provide such insane value upfront for someone to consider paying for your software that the margins usually tends to be quite low. Usually, you're going to struggle to charge someone more than $10 a month for a piece of software that you code. Again, you have the same problem that it's me versus the world, right? So software, inherently, you're going to be selling it on the internet, and on the internet everyone is your competition. The entire world is your competition, and it's also me against the best, which means that you're competing against the best in the world. So the best minds in the world are drawn to software. So not only are you competing against the world, you're competing against like the elites of the world. So it's a really, really difficult field. Content, the main cost with content is that you have to put a lot of time into it, right? It takes so much more than people realize to actually get good at making content and to build up an audience. Unless you have a really specific niche that you can target and you have experience making content before, it's going to be really tough. Like, even for me, getting to this stage where I can talk semi-confidently about a topic and make something that some people like to watch, it took over a year to get to this stage. And it is a skill that you have to acquire, and the only way to do it is to just put the reps in. Number 2 is margins. In the beginning, it's going to be basically impossible to generate any kind of income from content because you don't have the platform, right? What people are paying for with content creators is eyeballs, right? Attention. And since you don't have any attention, you're going to struggle to charge for your content. 3 is, again, it's me versus the world. the bar is set so high when it comes to consumer content. And since you're on a public platform, most likely like Instagram or YouTube, TikTok, you're competing against the rest of the world. And again, there's a lot of attention going into content. So some of the best creative minds are doing this game. They're playing this game of content. So you're up against really high competition. And finally, we get to service. A service business is what I wholeheartedly recommend. And it's because there is zero cost, there's zero monetary cost up front. The only thing that you have to give up is time. The only other sort of product that also has this is content. But unlike content, your margins are going to be good right from the get-go. Like as soon as you find someone who actually wants your service, you will be able to charge for it much, much quicker than you can with content. And if you're choosing your target audience right, if you're choosing like a physical service, for example, massage or like a personal trainer, then you're up against a local audience, not against the entire world. So your pool of competition is much lower, so you have a high likelihood of success. And that was what my business was, right? My first profitable business was a service business. And I tried all the rest, right? Like I tried doing content, I tried doing software, I tried doing products. And these are all lessons that I had to learn the hard way. And I'm giving them to you in the hopes that it saves you some time and a lot of money. I wanted to break this down more and use actual numbers. So hopefully you can see why I was so incredulous that they recommended case one with the water bottle and paid marketing as a viable path for someone who's just starting out, and why I think case two, the service business, dog walking, is such a better option. And by the way, I'm not putting anyone down. I made this mistake as well. I started out by selling physical products. I sold golf balls that were like branded, and I quit for the exact reason that I'm about to show you. Let's say case one, you're using paid marketing like they told you to, and you're doing e-commerce, you're selling a physical product, right? So paid marketing, usually when people start out, they start at about $10 per day spend. So that's about $300 a month. And then let's say you're bringing a product into market. You go into Alibaba, you type in water bottle, and let's say you pick this one. This one looks good, right? So you have this water bottle here. What you might not know is that the prices here are not actually true. So there's a concept called MOQ, which is minimum order quantity, which is the minimum amount, the minimum quantity that the factory will allow you to order and still have you as a customer. Because if they have someone who's willing to order 40,000 pieces or 100,000 pieces, they are obviously much more valuable as a customer than someone who's ordering 200 pieces. But when you're just starting out, you don't have the capital to front 40,000 pieces at $268 a piece. You have to order the small piece because you don't have any demand. Like you're not going to be able to move 40,000 pieces, right? So you start with 200, and let's say the price is correct. More likely than not, if you email them and ask them for 200 pieces, they're going to quote you a higher price. But let's say for the sake of argument, it's the right price, right? $368. Let's say you also want to stick a logo on it, right? Whenever you want to customize a piece, they're going to charge you a premium, per unit premium on top of what you're ordering, right? So let's say $368, and they charge you a premium, bring it up to $4 a piece. So $4 a piece, 200. So right off the bat, you're $800 down, right? Just the product cost, it's 800. What you don't know is on top of that, you have to get it shipped to whatever country you're living in. Unless you actually live in China or you're trying to sell this in China, you're going to have to get it shipped to where you live. Because you're only ordering 200 pieces, you can't book a container, which is how most commerce is shipped around the world, right? A shipping container. A shipping container is cheaper per unit, but you can move a lot more units. So you end up paying more. So it doesn't make sense to book a container. So you're going to have to get it air freighted over to you, which means that it's going to be like a $300, $400 air freight. So if you add $400 on top of that, you already, right off the bat, you're $1,200 down. Okay. Add on to that, let's say you have like a Shopify admin cost. You have Shopify, I think it's like $40 or something. So monthly fee, by the way, and this is also monthly, right? So every month you're spending $340, and this is just recurring, right? This happens regardless of how much you're making. As long as you want to keep going at this amount of marketing and this amount of, and you want to have a Shopify store, you're going to spend $340 a month. Okay, next you have a cost. So you have 200 water bottles and it costs you $1,200 to get them to you, which means per bottle, it's costing you $6, right? $6 per bottle is your cost. Now, let's say you've done your research and you think you can move these water bottles for $15 a pop, right? So that means your profit per bottle is going to be $9. And you're like, okay, that's not that bad. Just wait, because you have $9, but you're spending $340 per month on top of the $1,200 that you spent initially, right? So if you do 340, right, divided by 9, you have to sell 38 bottles to break even on the spend, your monthly spend for marketing and your Shopify. And by the way, if you're spending $300 and you're expecting to get 38 sales, that's a CAC. CAC, it stands for Customer Acquisition Cost of $8, which is insane. Seasoned brands, like really, really popular seasoned brands, don't get that CAC. Your CAC is most likely, when you're starting out, probably going to be closer to like $40 or $50, because you don't have any creatives, you don't have any testimonials, you don't have any brand equity, right? You're starting from a brand new zero situation. There's no way you're going to make this number happen, right? There's no way that you're going to spend $8 on an ad and get a customer to buy something for $15. So already the maths doesn't make sense. But let's say by some miracle, you make it happen, right? You make it happen and you keep this up. You sell 38 every month, 4 months in a row. This means that you have sold 151 bottles, right? 151 bottles sold in 4 months. Okay, you might be like, hey, that's a pretty good result, because maybe you're thinking about the numbers of you're selling each bottle for $15. So you've made $2,300 in 4 months. And maybe you're like, hey, that's not so bad. But you got to realize $6 per unit of that, $906 of that is cost. And the remainder, which is $1,360, that has gone into this. The sum of these numbers, which is your monthly cost, is exactly $1,360, right? So you've broken even. You've broken even and you're 151 units down. This means you have 50 water bottles left. You have 50 water bottles left and you've made $0. $0, and you've paid $1,200 to get these water bottles to you. So you started out minus $1,200 and you spent $1,360 over the course of the 4 months, and your revenue, which is the amount of money that you brought in, is $2,266. So in total, after 4 months of work, you have 50 water bottles left and you're still $290 down, right? And that's with the miraculous assumption that you managed to sell 38 units right off the bat when you've never done this before, with a generic product that you've got on Alibaba with no brand equity and with paid marketing that you're running at $10 a day, expecting $8 CAC. Let's think about case 2, which is the service, the dog walking service with organic marketing. So right off the bat, you're not using any kind of marketing service. So your marketing cost is $0 per month. Let's make a more reasonable assumption here, which is that you spend the first month working with people for free so that you can get testimonials and get some reviews for your service so that you can work with people in the future, but more profitably. So in the first month, you make $0. And let's say for the second month, you find one person who's willing to let you walk their dog and they're willing to pay you. How much is a dog walker? Okay, average dog walking, 10 to 20 pounds per walk. Okay, let's say $15 an hour and you're walking them 5 times a week, right? Just during the weekdays. So 5 weekdays per week, so that's 20 per month. So you're working 20 days per month for 1 hour a day, at $15 an hour. So you've made $300 already, right? You're making $300 working on 1 hour a day. Let's say you get 2 more people, right? You do a really good job with this one customer and you get 2 more people to work with. So now you have 3 people and you're working 3 hours a day and you're making $900. And by the way, you have no monthly cost, you have no marketing cost, you don't have any upfront cost of $1,200, right? There's no inventory you need to purchase. So this is all profit. So you have $1,200 in profit at the end of month 3. Whereas here you were literally down $1,200 from day 1. Okay. And then, as long as you're doing a good job and you're diligent and you go out and you talk to people and you try and find new people to walk, you can grow this. Like, the sky's the limit, really, here. But let's say, for the sake of argument, you took some days off and you just had the exact same number of customers, right? Even still, at the end of the 4 months, here you're $2,100 up, whereas here you were $1,200 down, right? And that's with the miraculous CAC and the miraculous marketing, and the assumption that the product is good. This is without paying any taxes, wouldn't even include VAT or anything. Oh, and one more thing, how many water bottles do you buy every month? You probably buy a water bottle once every 6 months or something, if you're anything like me. What that means is, here, you have to get 38 new people every single month. They're not repeat customers. You have to convince 38 people, new people, every single month to buy your thing. At the end of this, you have to have convinced 151 people that your water bottle is worth buying. Whereas here, you're providing a repeat service. It's a subscription service, right? And here you're serving 1 customer. And here you're serving 3 customers. 3 customers. At the end of this, you have to have convinced 3 people to let you walk their dog. 151 versus 3. Have you ever tried convincing someone to help you or let you do something for them? How much easier do you think it is to convince 3 people versus 151 people? The question that I just ask is, which one do you want? Which one sounds more feasible, more plausible, and which one sounds like a better outcome? Convince 151 people to buy your thing and still be $300 down at the end of 4 months, or convince 3 people and have $2,100 pure profit. When you're thinking about what business to choose, I think it's important to consider this topic of runways. And a runway is a term that's often used in startups. It's used to describe the time that you have left alive, or, this is probably my own definition, but the time that you have to get to an outcome. So what do I mean by this? So let's say you have $1,000 saved and you spend $100 a month. That means your runway is 10 months. You have 10 months alive before you either take off or you crash and burn. What I mean by take off is you reach profitability, right? You reach a point where it doesn't matter how much money you have saved, because you are generating enough cash flow that you can actually fund and grow your business without any kind of initial saving or investment. On the flip side, you have a time to outcome. So let's say you need $1,000 to get a product out the door, and you have a spare $100 a month that you can put into this project. That means you have to wait 10 months before you can actually make something happen here. And the only way to accelerate that is by taking on a loan or taking on investment, right? But if you do that, you're inherently increasing your risk. When you take on funding or investment, you are taking outside capital and you're betting that you are going to make this thing into a success, whatever it is. And you're getting other people to bet their money that you can make this thing happen. Not only is this a difficult thing to convince other people to do, it's also more risky because it impairs your decision making. And you might say no, it's fine. I'm mentally strong, but trust me, when you need to make a quick pivot, it's much easier if you have no outside funding and you can just experiment and you can make mistakes much more freely, which is going to be a necessary part to get to actual success. So let's say you actually decide on a service business, and I'm only going to talk about a service business. In my opinion, it's the only thing that's viable when you're starting out fresh and you have no experience running a business. The first thing that we're going to have to do is actually start building trust. In the beginning, we start out with no trust. And when we're starting out, we need to trade our time for trust so that we can trade the trust for money. And it took me a long time to learn this. For the first 3 months, I was just trying to sell an offer without any track record and being really frustrated that no one would be willing to buy. What I didn't realize was that it didn't matter how good the offer was, or it didn't matter how big my promise was to the customer, because the customer didn't trust that I could deliver that. And so no one was willing to pay because I had no track record. They didn't trust me. So what are the steps to make this happen? Step 1 is going to be to choose a service. And really, really simply, it's helpful to condense things down into one sentence. So what does this look like? I help busy dog owners help their dog get daily exercise without having to walk them for an hour every day. In my case, I help ambitious students get into top universities without giving up what they love to do. What do you do about the elephant in the room, right? What do you do if you have some kind of negative track record, some history that's likely to make someone view you in a negative light? Well, there are only 2 options here. You can either acknowledge it or you can hide it. And in these instances, I always choose whatever helps me sleep at night. And this also usually happens to be whatever scares me the most. So what you can do here is you can work whatever happened into your story. And you don't need to go into excruciating detail, like a play-by-play of everything that happened. You just need the broad themes. And just to give you some context, I was telling people how to get into top universities because I had that track record. I'd gotten into some of the top universities around the world, and so I knew how to do it. What people don't expect is that I was also kicked out of a top university for a year. Right? I was suspended for a year. People don't expect that. And that directly ties into how people perceive me, right? My ability to deliver top quality service is definitely impacted by the fact that I was kicked out for a year. So what do? What I would do is, in every sales call, I'll just outline what happened and work it into the actual offer that I was giving people. I would say, oh, by the way, I got kicked out for a year because I lost motivation after getting into college, which is why I'm working with students now, so it doesn't happen to them, right? So this happened because of this, which is why I'm doing this. So it's really, really simple, and you don't need more than that. What happened to me was people would just be like, oh, okay. And I'm not comparing the two, right? The two are not comparable, and I get that. But the general principle stands. You can either hide it or you can own it. Those are the only 2 options. And you might be surprised at how forgiving people are if you do decide to own it. Just to give one more example from my personal life, I had gender identity issues in the past because I was struggling to find meaning in my life, which is why I push myself so hard now. Just to give one more example, if you look at this guy, Alex Hormozy, who is a really successful business guy and a massive entrepreneur, he talks about his DUI. He crashed a car while driving under the influence, and he talks about it openly. And the way that he phrases it is, I crashed a car while I was drunk driving because I was running 10 businesses and was massively stressed, which is why I ended up closing all my businesses and focusing on the one thing that matters, right? That's the way that he tells his story. And the way that you beat the negative is you first acknowledge it, and then you stack evidence on the other side of it that's so big that people don't care, right? It becomes like a little blip. But the first step is to acknowledge it, to admit it, because if your foundation is a lie, then everything else that's built on top of that is ultimately unstable. So it's whatever it is, whatever place you're starting from, it's much, much better to start from the truth, because that's the only way that you could actually build up to something big. Whatever the thing is that you're hiding, especially in entrepreneurship, because look, fundamentally there's so much uncertainty, And there's going to be a lot of imposter syndrome because ultimately you're trying to do something that you've never done before. And so it makes sense that you feel like an imposter. But if you could admit all the truths that you think are flaws up front, then you don't have anything that can bring you down. And actually, it gives a lot more stability. Okay, so how do you actually start? How do you actually get going? First thing you want to do is you want to go to your friends and family. And the reason for that is they are more likely to give you a chance than complete strangers. Think just about yourself. If someone completely random came up to you from the street and asked you for some money versus your friend or a family member came up to you and asked you for money, like which one are you more likely to say yes to? And before you think, oh no, but I don't want to ask my friends for money, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry, you're not actually going to ask them for money. You're going to work for free. Because remember the first step that we talked about, which was you need to trade your time for trust. And what trust looks like in a business setting is a testimonial. So you're going to work for free in exchange for a testimonial. And you're just going to ask people until you get someone to say yes. And then you do a great job and you get a testimonial, right? So what do you actually ask? So in realistic terms, if for the dog walking example, you might say, I'm looking to help busy dog owners get their walks in without spending an hour every day. I'm taking on 3 people for free 1-hour walks for 1 week, just looking for some testimonials. And you can add some credentials in if you have any. I've been a dog owner for the past 10 years. I love dogs. Does anyone you like come to mind? And if they're a close friend or family and you've chosen the right avatar, then what they might say is, yeah, me actually, like I would love for you to walk my dog. I would love for you to tutor my son, right? And the beauty here is they already are more likely to know your story, right? So you don't need to go through the painful experience of like explaining your story to them because they already know, right? So you get a free pass on that one. Enjoy it because there's not a lot of them in business. And then when you're done giving them a great experience, doing the best job you possibly can, you get a testimonial. What does the testimonial look like? The most powerful testimonial is going to be a video testimonial where they talk about your services. The second most powerful is going to be a photo with like you with them providing the service, like a thumbs up sort of selfie with a written comment. And then the weakest one is just going to be the written comment. If you're really close to this person, then like try and force them into a video. It will pay off, trust me. Okay. And then you're going to want to ask them to make it specific. There's a tendency among customers, especially friends who are looking out for you, to try and generalize whatever the testimonial is because they're like, well, if it was helpful in my specific instance, it's unlikely that someone else is going to have this specific problem. So like I should be more generic. Wrong. It's the complete opposite. You want to make it as specific as possible. You want them to talk about their pain point, your exact solution to that particular pain that they had, and give like a really specific story about it, right? So for the dog walking example, it might be like, I have a really small dog that's got a bowel problem and Ben was able to walk them anyways and was really patient with them even though they had to stop every 5 minutes to do their business. One time, Ben ran out of poo bags halfway through the walk, so had to like improvise and got some bags from a local grocery store and helped out the dog. What I don't know, whatever it is. This was the exact phrasing that I used for my previous business. So please leave your glowing review here. The more specific it is, the better. Example, week 3 of the program, when we chose an activity and broke down the next steps to my activity, helped me build my project into something concrete in the real world, because that was what I did. And it gave me reviews like this. I found session 2 the most helpful. Providing a structured framework for reflecting on extracurriculars and awards has genuinely provided a greater sense of direction already, and has made me see the value and appreciate my enjoyment in some activities more. I find presentations in all sessions to be helpful as they provide a basis for further discussion and talking. The pamphlets on inversion thinking, specific example, and presenting have also helped crystallize things we have discussed in sessions and made them easier to implement. I'm very grateful for your flexibility with arranging session times, as I appreciate my schedule is a bit chaotic. Right, so that covers specific example, pain point that they had, and a story about the specific service that I provided. So once you've done that, once you've got some people to say yes, and they've given you some testimonials, what do you do then? How do you go from a free service to a paid service? Well, it's really, really simple. At the end of the offer, the engagement that you have with this person, you get the testimonial and you simply just ask, do you want to continue with the service that I've given you for a paid engagement? And if they say yes, great. You have a paid customer now. If they say no, you say, okay, no problem. Do you know anyone else who might need this? And again, if they say yes, great. If they say no, no problem. You got your testimonial, you're good. And once you have that testimonial, you can use it to message people. And you use the same offer as before, but you include the testimonial, right? Remember previously there was that section which was like your credentials, right? You message people with the offer, you say, hey, I'm doing this thing, I'm working with this type of person, solving this problem, here are my credentials. And you can now add the credentials. And if you're initially struggling to get people on board because you only have a handful of credentials, then you can start with a free trial. So you can set that frame up front and say like, hey, like this is a free trial. It is going to turn into paid. Here are the testimonials that I have, proof that like I can actually do what I say I can do. And then you take that someone through that same journey of being a free customer to paid customer. And you just repeat this. And you just do it again and again and again until someone says yes to working with you on a paid basis. And then you can say, hey, like I'm working with this person for this much money. Here's their testimonial. Would you like to do the same? Right? Like then you have a point of proof that your thing is actually worth some money and someone is paying you to do this thing. And then it just gets easier and easier. And you repeat that. You get more people on board. You get more people on board. You get more people on board until you run out of time. Now, this is a different problem. And when you run out of time, you can do one of two things. You can increase your price, right? You go to everyone that you're working with and say, hey, like, I know you've been working with me for this price, for the price of free or the price of whatever, $10 an hour. But I don't actually have enough time for this. So I'm increasing my prices to $15 an hour. Would you still like to work with me? And you might lose, 20%, 30% of your customers. But if you actually do the maths, whatever the increase is going to make up for whatever the churn rate of your customer base is. Let's say you're working with 10 people a day, $10 an hour, right? So you're making $100 a day. And then you say you're increasing your prices to $15. Let's say you lose 3 customers. So you have 7 customers, $15 an hour. At this point, you're making $105. But you're still making more money, but you're spending less time. So the beauty of this is you can keep doing this. You can keep increasing the price. And there's really no limit. Like as long as you keep making your service better, as long as you keep investing in the quality of whatever your deliverable is, you can keep raising the price. That's how I was able to go from $300 for like a 9-week engagement to $900 to $1,500, right? Like you just repeat the work until you get better and you have more proof that you can deliver on your promise and you can increase your price. And there really is no limit to this. On the flip side, you can also work with people until you run out of time, right? Like all your time is booked up. You're doing 10 hours of work a day. And then you start working in groups. So instead of walking dogs one-on-one, you walk dogs 1-on-4, 1-on-6, right? And instead of, let's say, $10 an hour, let's say you charge $7 an hour, right? Like you're doing $10 an hour one-on-one dog walking, and then you go to 4 dogs, $7 an hour, you're making $28 an hour now, right? $28 an hour for 4 dogs. So you can make more by charging more per customer, or you can make more by working with more people, more dogs per time slot. And just to give you a little caveat, a little disclaimer, this can take a long time. And you're going to encounter a lot of people who tell you no, but it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's just what entrepreneurship is. So I hope some of you found this helpful. This, like I said earlier in the video, this applies to anyone that's starting something from scratch, that's brand new to business, right? It's not just for people in that particular situation that I mentioned at the start of the video. It can be for anyone. If you like this kind of thing, subscribe to see more. And if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments.